guy.
We're live.
You'll be fine.
We are live.
Classic respect, right? Just don't call Elizabeth ma'am. She doesn't like it.
I know she's gonna have to live with that one. Sorry.
I guess it's just that Southern hospitality.
That's
So
right.
we're okay. So we are live on Insta as well.
And I don't
We're
even
live
know if it's that. I think it's more of a respect factor.
I know.
It is the cowboy
it is.
mentality, right? Or is it? Would you say that you have that cowboy mentality?
Man, I don't know. I think it's just my dad putting 4 fingers in the forehead as I was a young man. I don't know if it's a cowboy mentality as much as it was literally beat into me. So,
all good. We are live on LinkedIn.
I see that, and I'm waiting for it to go live on my account so I can open that one up. So welcome everyone. If I can't see who's in here yet, so
we have full people. Happy Friday, folks.
Go. All right, so we're getting our audience. We'll start in about 30 seconds. Happy Friday, everyone. Drop where you're from, or where you're dialing in from, where you can go ahead and drop your LinkedIn if you like. We'll get started in a minute. I already see some regular faces or names here, faces and names here, which is really great. I love seeing the same people every week. It's great to be getting to know you guys. We will start in just a minute here as people start logging in. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So today we have Shane Melton. Everyone has been asking for construction. So we are bringing you a just super knowledgeable person in construction because Shane is a VP. He's worked his way up through the project management industry in construction. He's a vice president of operations. He brings to us over 20 years of experience leading high stakes construction projects and across the country. He's worked on projects as from stalled $270 million projects up to just really fast moving transportation corridors. He's built a reputation for stabilizing chaos and rebuilding performance through what he calls his Turnaround Playbook. We're really excited to have you here, Shane. Thank you so much for joining us. And love if you can just share a little bit about yourself before we dive in.
Well, I'm straight up a Texan first and foremost, but I wanted to kind of share how I kind of got in my career a little bit. I started off, I went to East Texas State University. Got out of school, thought I was going to be a football coach or a baseball coach, and learned that me and 8th graders didn't get along at the time. So my dad was an electrical engineer, a lighting specialist whenever I was young. So I wanted to avoid the trades like the plague. Long story short, I ended up at a company that did electrical and HVAC work. And that started my entire career. So I have worked in electrical, I've worked in HVAC. I have also framed up multiple types of buildings, and I got to about 26, 27 years old in life and realized that I know a lot of different things, but I was an expert at nothing. And I had a blessing in my life from a gentleman that said, "You sound more like a project manager." And that's where my project management career took off, was because I didn't know enough about anything. But I knew a lot about a little bit of stuff. Anyway, so long story short, I had a blessing happen. I started off as an associate project manager on a project building an apartment complex. I'll tell you real quick short story on that. That my very first project, I was so intense about the project and thought I had to be the expert on everything. And every time I'd have a meeting with the electrician or the plumber, I would go home that night and study the plans. It stressed me out beyond all belief. So after that project was done, it did come in under budget. It came in on time, and it was a successful project.
Very
The gentleman
nice.
that was my mentor at the time, what he told me, he sat me down and asked me how it went, and I told him I thought it was very difficult. And he told me one term that I've never forgotten since that day is, Shane, you didn't let the experts be the experts. You don't have to be the expert over everything. You hire the experts in. And
That's
luckily, I learned that lesson early in life. So there's my.
Well, it's a
That's
great.
a good lesson to learn early.
That's a great segue, actually, because, project managers, we are never going to be the subject matter experts in everything. We have to lean on the subject matter experts, whether in tech, construction, or in any other subset of project management. Now, one of the things that many of our viewers probably do not know is what entails a project in construction. What are the different phases, or what are the different elements, Shane, if you would?
So just to break it down in the most simplistic form, you have pre-construction, you have what I call the maintenance phase or construction phase, and you have post-construction. So the pre-construction phase, it mainly consists of all the planning, all the budgeting, all the scheduling, procurement, and you are trying to, according to your schedule, I lead a project by a schedule strictly. And the reason I do that is because that plan, now we can get into scheduling later because that's an entirely different aspect, but the plan is ever evolving, and but you need a plan that's going in because you're about to construct a $28-30 million facility, whatever you're building, and you need a plan to go into that. So we have to put money to it. We have to put a schedule to it, and we have to put our procurement in line because of lead time, so on and so forth. The second phase is the construction, or what I like to consider the maintenance phase. That's per my terminologies. That is literally where you're performing the work and you're executing the planned schedule, the planned elements of the project. Post-construction is going to include wrapping up the project, any manuals that you need, any warranties, all the insurance closeouts. That phase of the project is what I consider the post-construction phase.
So it sounds like to me, and I know Justin's got his next question, but it sounds to me like that schedule, because we know there's so many in construction, there's going to be so many dependencies because you have inspections and all this different stuff. That schedule is going to be very hard to change, right? And so that's why you put so much focus on that schedule, because it becomes more difficult to change because you have so many people who have to do certain things at certain times.
So yeah, I'm glad you're gonna let me speak to the schedule, because if there are anybody that's in this construction industry that's sitting here listening right now, they absolutely hate what you just said.
Oh,
and
really?
not in a negative vibe, but if they hear that a project's ran by a schedule, the first thing they're going to say, you cannot plan field conditions, you cannot plan weather, you cannot plan the elements that affect you on a day in and day out basis. So the schedule is ever changing. I call it a living document.
Okay.
So then the reason the schedule is so important to me, because I need a realistic idea of where my project is within my production versus my budgetary means. So those need to be closely related as I run a project. And if you don't maintain the schedule with quite a bit of accuracy, you're not going to be able to see the full view of the project where it is. You can go out in the field and you can see that I've completed 39% of my duct banks. But yet, if my schedule says that I should have been 67%, I have to make corrections and adjustments. Are the risk factors that I need to consider into that element? What's going on? So without an accurate schedule, I cannot depict what's actually going on and where I'm projecting to be completed. Because generally speaking, I've got hard deadlines that I'm working up against with milestones that I need to accomplish for different financial benefits of the project.
So I think there's an important piece, which is why schedules are difficult, and you kind of alluded to it, which is dependencies. Dependencies are huge in construction. I know that there are literally within hours of each other of different contractors. One has to install the heater, HVAC. How does that stand? AC, heating,
HVAC.
ventral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying. What's the acronym again? It's heating, ventral.
Heating, ventilating, and air conditioning.
Thank you. System. And then after that, you've also got the electrical or the plumbing, and some of them have to be within a certain order because of the inspections.
Right.
And that's just without taking in the elements. Like if you have weather, then you have to also account for that as well. You can't pour concrete at a certain time, or the framing has to go up. But the important piece is understanding those interdependencies in the projects in construction, just like in tech or in other projects as well. My question to you is, because you alluded to it earlier, is this project size. Can you give us an understanding as to what a small, medium, and a large project is in construction?
Man, that can vary. So in my world, a small project runs between 10 and 20 million. Well, I'll say $1 to about $7 million. A medium-sized project can run from about 7 to 20 something million. A large project can run 20 million to 40 or 50. And then once you start getting above the 50, it's a different animal altogether.
Hold on, Ian, before you go to that question. So yeah, that's an important piece here, which is that 1 to 7 million, that's the size of a small construction project. That complexity, that level of budgetary need is different than, let's say, most other projects that I'm aware of from a small perspective are around $150,000, $20,000 projects. That scalability is vastly different from the construction field versus the IT field versus any other industry that I'm aware of.
So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and grab that question that just came up and allude to what you are saying here.
Yeah.
So within our scheduling software, I personally like to use a program called Primavera. Some people may be familiar with it, they may not be. Within Primavera, and it allows me to break down an entire project into a work breakdown structure. Okay. So I can break it down in multiple ways, however I want to do that. But for instance, if I have a project where I am, like on my current project, we may have tank building as a work breakdown structure, my electrical as a work breakdown structure, my mechanical as a work breakdown structure. Inside of each of those work breakdown structures, we have a sequence of activities that happen to accomplish all of those elements of the project, because there may be 40, 50 different contractors out on a project helping me accomplish this. Okay. So I break them down into the task level to where we can see what each element requires as far as effort. Now, as far as it goes into the planning of the budget with the question here, the budget is planned according to task and work breakdown structure. Okay. So each line item of the schedule has a dollar amount that's associated with it for a production rate that we feel like we will accomplish on a particular line item. So the accumulation of 1,300 different line items is how we put the project budget in place. I hope that answered his question. But we do it task, so we apply the budget on task level.
So let me ask you this, because we're talking about budget sizes, right? And clearly a small construction project, right? Like Justin and I are used to a small project, because we come from tech, is like $150,000 for me. Maybe it's up to $1 million or $2 at most, right? So how important is when it comes to the skills you need from a project manager in construction, right? It sounds like budget is going to be a very big asset, or the ability to manage a budget and understand it. So I'd love to just dive into a little bit about what type of skills you'd expect from a project manager to do that work, from both the budget as well as what other skills are super important when it comes to that you look for when it comes to construction project management.
Okay. So, and let me circle back and tell you that there are construction projects that are 150,000. There's $25,000. Just because that may not be the world that I live in,
Okay.
doesn't mean that they don't exist. Okay. And so let me preface by saying that you learn a lot when you're, a lot of these guys get their start in construction by doing maybe a home remodel or a commercial remodel. And that's where you're going to get the smaller scale budgetary line items. And what you learn in those fields, I love those guys. And the reason I do is because, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to run a $150 million project than it is a $10 million project. Because in a $10 million project, I have flexibility. So I have certain line items that are going to, I'm going to maybe overrun a few line items, but yet I'm going to be under budget on a few more. So I can roll budgets to different areas within that project, where if you're on a smaller project, you're working with a really tight constraint. The reason that I really like the guys that come from the smaller scale projects is because as far as budgetary means, that is one of the aspects that I do look for in a project manager, somebody that can run a budget. If you can perform a budget and you don't have any wiggle room in that budget, you have to be extremely detailed about what you're going to accomplish. Because there are so many different elements to construct a project, and I'm sure it's the same in the IT world. I'm unfamiliar with the IT world. There's so many different elements within a project that you may miss, and you need to find a creative way to accomplish it because it holds up the entire job, and you might have missed this particular element. A smaller job doesn't have that wiggle room, so you have to be really creative on how to manage your budget and accomplish that, whether that's decreasing your man hours, so on and so forth. As far as skill sets that I look for in project management, the number one thing that I look for in an individual is somebody that can champion a project. There's a mindset that goes behind it, because not everybody has that championing mindset and are built to go take the pressures of walking out to the field every day. I like people, what I call is they take the bull by the horns.
So ownership, you look for ownership.
Ownership 100%, but it's got to be ownership in more than just a project. It's how do they talk? How do they carry themselves? How do they communicate? That championing has to be an element of who they are, not a job responsibility in my perspective. The other elements that I look for in a project manager is I need somebody that knows how to estimate. I need somebody that knows how to build a schedule and understand sequencing of a project. And I also need somebody that reads plans, because you can't walk into my world and not be able to read a set of plans and be a project manager. You can't get into a project that's ever changing and have a change order come up and not know how to estimate and know if your subcontractors might be handing you the right information. You have to be able to justify and quantify every decision, because ultimately your client has agreed to pay you that $15 million to produce this project. And that's where you need to land.
So let me ask you this, because you bring up a good point, which is that schedule. Okay. So scheduling, estimating, budgeting, those are basic skills of a project manager. Now, reading blueprints is different. So for someone who's not in construction, right? How does someone get into construction, start learning how to read blueprints, right? Because a lot of people have asked us that, of how do you get into construction project management? What does it look like? The promotion path look like, right? What the different roles are. So I think that would be really helpful to everyone, because you're not going to know blueprints immediately, right? Just like you're not going to know how to do schedules immediately, but how do you start learning that? How do you get into the field?
So as far as learning, number one, you jump on and there's classes online that'll teach you how to read the blueprints. But my personal preference is whenever you take the blueprints and you are actually installing and doing the instructions. Look, the blueprints are nothing but a large instruction manual. That's all they are. It's anytime you pull out a puzzle box, you look at that picture constantly, don't you? You know, because
they're not IKEA, right? Like that you have all the pieces to it.
Well, that's a different element. The problem is the problem sometimes the engineers and architects may miss some elements, but so sometimes the instructions might be a little off, and that requires a different type of dealings. But for the most part, I think the best way to learn plans is if you start off as a laborer, and whether you're an electrician, whether you're a civil worker, an equipment operator, whatever it might be, and you start off on those elements and you allow you're looking at just the electrical portion of the plans and you're going and installing the electrical portion of the plans. Then you start learning what all the different notes that the architects and the engineers put on the plans to reference more specificity. So, but I would highly suggest if somebody wants to learn how to read plans, number one, go take a couple classes online and get a foundation. And then I would highly suggest that you go into the field that you may be interested in, one of the trades, and allow that installation process to take place, because that's where you learn. In my opinion, you learn in the ditches. So I guess that's my best recommendation. It just comes over time and you master it over time. And quite frankly, I don't think there's a construction manager out there or a project manager out there that'll tell you that you ever feel like you know everything. So you're always learning because they change things all the time.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've kind of had an opinion about is construction project managers tend to have a lot more authority than an IT project management. Can you give us a little bit more of an understanding about the type of responsibilities that a project manager has in terms of firing, making decisions in a construction project, and how they report to a general contractor versus, say, the business sponsor?
So, yes, man, I would like to say that you're accurate. And you are, every organization is different. And man, so let me speak first on, that's one of the things that I feel like project management has an issue with, is that you can't be a project manager without authorities. You can't do it. And we as project managers need to be clear about the authorities that we need, if that makes sense, because depending on the company and the structure is what authorities that are given to you. From my perspective, if the project falls under my purview, there is no one on that project that is more responsible. I am the champion of the project, and I try to invite more champions to pursue that project with me. So on a typical field, I'm responsible for every single element that goes on, whether it's a laborer, whether it's a superintendent, whether it's a general superintendent, my construction managers. It doesn't matter who's out there. I have complete authority over that project. I don't like to talk about hiring or firing too much, just because the construction field, and this is where I'll share that we need to do a better job of making the construction field a career, not a job. And I'm very cautious about whenever I go fire people. And I'll tell you, I had a great mentor of mine that told me a long, long time ago, because, well, guys, I'm old. And he told me a long, long time ago, he said, people don't get fired. They fire themselves. They know it's coming. So if I have somebody that is just being an insubordinate, I will walk them off the job immediately. We're in Texas. We have it's a right to work state. So we have different laws than other states do. So I can walk them off the job. But the reality is that we try to encourage our guys in a plan to try to improve performance. So as far as budgetary and everything else, I have complete authority of the project.
Well, that's great, because that's completely different in IT. IT, you don't have control of the budget. You don't have control of the scope. You don't have control of extending timelines or shortening them. You have to proposition them to the business sponsors, and they make the decision. There's a disconnect in accountability and the ability to make changes compared to construction, which is why I wanted you to emphasize that.
So okay, now that I kind of understand where you're at there, because guys, I am not an IT guy. I don't pretend to be an IT guy. If it wasn't for you, half my stuff wouldn't work. I get it. So I depend on you vitally. You're a vital part of my job. So let me back up and say this. Whenever I say I have complete authority, I have complete authority within the realms, but communication is the number one key. So with our stakeholders, our owners, our clients, it is my responsibility as a project manager. I try to work 30, 60, 90 days ahead of a schedule. I try to anticipate any risk factors. I try to anticipate anything that's coming up that might be a hiccup in the progress of the job itself. If I recognize elements that are coming up that seem a little out of character, it is the communication phase, and that's where I do take it to our stakeholders, to our management, the proper hierarchy, if you will, on a project. So it's not that I have complete authority, because I cannot go spend stakeholder money that's not there. I have an allotted budget that I have to stay within, and I'm responsible for that allotted budget. Anything that grows outside of that allotted budget, it's up to my communication. And then it may be, whether it's a financial change, whether it's a change in planning, whether it's a change in design, that element is determined by the stakeholders and the team that we put around that particular element.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about technology. We have a question in the chat about that. I'm going to open it up here. So in 2025, and as we move into 2026, how have you integrated emerging technology, specifically AI, BIM, and Internet of Things, to move from reactive to proactive project management? I mean, how much does technology impact construction project management? I think is that first question before we even go into this, right?
So I'll tell you that what I've seen so far in speaking more specifically towards the AI elements, what I've seen in the software has helped us significantly, because we have takeoff software and estimating software that, if you do it the way that I was taught years ago, where you print out a set of plans and you get a ruler and start measuring, it took weeks and weeks. Where now you have AI that I can upload a set of plans to. It'll break out the plans into different elements of the project. It will, and I can pull my measurements, I can pull my takeoffs, and it'll record them. So it's literally taken my estimating process from, we'll just say on a larger project, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. It's taking it down to where I can get those elements out of it within a week and a half.
Wow.
Very rapidly. As
Hold
far
on,
as
Shane. What is the takeoff?
Do what?
What is the takeoff again? Isn't that like the blueprinting?
Oh, yes. Okay. So that's just a materials takeoff. So when you're reading into your plans, it's going to tell you what the quantities are on the materials that you need. So I have to pull out all those elements so I can put my estimates together. So a takeoff is literally just looking at your materials and your labor efforts that you're going to be using. So, as far as in the construction maintenance field, one of the helpful tools, the reason I like Primavera is because of some of the technology that's built into it. Because instead of going, so each, and man, you're asking me to describe a world that I'm not really used to. I would do my schedules on a spreadsheet, quite literally. Okay. Now, whenever I build my work breakdown structures and my activities and my task lists, I can go through and hit one button and it'll reschedule every element to follow in one click, if you will, rather than me having to go individually change every line item, which used to take forever. So the technologies, in the end, of course, whenever you're talking about document controls, how we share those files, how we get our CMT or our construction. So we have different inspections and different testings that we have to get done. I'm in a process right now where we are waiting to get some generators set on some pads. Well, the pad has to cure for 28 days before I can set these generators. The way that the testing company sends me the information has been changed 100% through AI and technology, because they can share it immediately rather than having to snail mail it, come to the job site, but everybody can get the information all at one time. I apologize that I sounded like I was just chewing on my gums when I was talking there, but man.
You're fine. I do want to switch gears though. So I want to understand. So what is the difference when we're talking about construction PM or construction project managers? I know there are different roles that with along that career path. But I also want to understand if there's a difference between project managers who are in the field versus and like what those differences are versus project managers. Are there project managers for construction that are never in the field? Are there project managers that are only in the field? Is it both? What are those different dynamics? Because I think that would be really interesting, because again, with Justin and me being in IT, yeah, we might go visit a client site, but we're not really in the field, so to say. Like there's safety concerns, there's all that stuff to think about.
So I'll tell you, speaking on my part, all of my construction managers or all of my project managers are required to be in the field. Not all the time. They do have office time as well. But, and forgive me for the way I'm going to put it, but I believe in licking it, seeing it, and feeling it. If you don't understand and feel the project that's going on around you, you don't have a good concept of the project. That's my personal belief in that. So my project managers do go visit the sites on a very frequent basis. The reason is they have an entire staff that reports to them on that particular project. So on a mid-sized project, they're going to have, they may have 30 or 40 laborers within the different trades. They may have 3 or 4 or 5 different subcontractors that are rolling on. Each trade is going to have, so if I have some guys that are putting in a duct bank, you're going to have the guys that those are the laborers that are literally installing it, journeyman electricians in our case here. And then above them, you're going to have a lead man. That lead man is going to be responsible for 4 or 5 guys that are leading a specific element of the project. Above them, you're going to have a foreman that may be responsible for 2 crews or 2 lead men or 3 lead men, however many it might be, leading an overall effort within the electrical element, since we're talking about duct banks. Above the foreman, you're going to have what we call a trade superintendent. Now, he is the expert. He's the one that is going to hold the knowledge. He's going to be the one responsible for teaching the foreman, the lead men, the laborers on what their respective duties and responsibilities are, setting the goals of the day within the communication of the general superintendent or construction manager, which is setting the tone for all execution. So my general superintendent, my construction manager is responsible for every element. So he's not just responsible for the electrical. He may be responsible for the electrical, the mechanical, the framework, the structural, whatever is going on. He is responsible for the overall execution of that. Above that, you have the project manager that is responsible. That project manager above the construction, right? So the way we term it is our project manager. Oh, sorry, our general superintendent or construction manager is responsible for everything outside the job shack walls. Okay. Now, the construction manager and the project manager work hand in hand, developing the plans in a 2-3 week look ahead, or, I like to see a little bit further than that. And they plan out the execution of work, communicate that to the superintendents communicate that to the foreman. That's why I always tell my project managers that if you want to know what's really going on in your job, get out of the job shack, go down into the ditch and ask that guy that's actually installing that what his responsibilities are for that day. And you will find out that how well your communication is going on throughout the entire project.
So that's a good point. No, that makes perfect sense, because there's a disconnect between sending an email or giving them a call, because there's general contractors, subcontractors, and actually going to physically see if they understand what was communicated. And that's without taking out Shauna's piece, where there's the technical piece. Because I know there's some contractors do not want to punch in their number and log into an app and all of that. That's a whole different ballgame. But I want to close out with this overall arch around the construction piece, which is to do with the cash flow of projects. How do you map that out? And specifically, how do you ensure the project doesn't go upside down, starting with billing? Because I know that in construction project management, there's a whole subset, a group of people that are doing invoicing and reconciliation processes throughout.
Yes.
And that will kind of transition us away from this last question, which is the mechanics of construction project management, to then move into leadership. So if you would, Shane, please.
Okay. So mapping out the cash flow of the projects, we have what's called a schedule of values. So when we do our, so at the, what we do as at the end of each month, we go through and we calculate a production that we've accomplished per that month. That goes against the line item that I actually spoke about earlier in the schedule, and we can look and see how much we accomplished. So the production rate against the schedule of values is how we map out all of our cash flow. We bill according to the schedule of values. So we tell the client that we are going to perform XYZ task for a certain amount of dollars over 1,800 linear feet. So if we accomplish 600 of those linear feet, that's where our percentages come in. So we don't finish a line item. We bill for a certain percentage of that line item because some of the line items just take months and months to get. So we are a percentage-driven industry. How do you make sure the project doesn't go upside down? Man, I pray a lot. That's really my answer. So how do you do that? The legitimate answer is very straightforward. That's where the project manager has to stay on top of his budget, his scheduling, his tasks, his people every single day. Every PO that goes out, he needs to account it. So our accounting systems are built in two different phases. You have project accounting and then corporate accounting. So out of the field, if we issue a purchase order, if we call for a purchase order, whatever the system is that the company uses, that needs to be listed in our project accounting software, because that's an anticipation of, hey, I've spent this money, although the invoicing hasn't hit it yet. I need to know that this money is not there anymore. It's kind of like the old days when we used to all write checks and we didn't write the check down in the check register. Okay. That's kind of the equivalent in my book. And so we operate a checkbook register on the project accounting side to a degree of money that we have agreed to spend and send out on the project. Corporate accounting takes that and puts it into our specific line items. And then we have what we call a end of month meeting where we look at the variances between those two elements to make sure that they match and see if we can find any discrepancies. Outside of that, I wanted to speak because I just talked about the people in the ditch. One of the reasons that I like about my PMs to be out in the field is because I want them to shake everybody's hand. I want them to know everybody by name. I want everybody to feel like they are valued. I want them to feel like they are appreciated and that they are an important element to what we do every single day. Because look, some of the trades out there, they're not easy trades. I get it. And man, whenever it's 115 degrees outside, I want them to know that we're thinking about them. We're trying to take care of them and we're looking out for them. The biggest element, in my opinion, for project management is looking out for the people that you have working with you. Because you cannot create any type of succession plan if you don't have anybody to create that plan with. And so if we have any failures in the construction field that I would like to see get better is the guys, I call them the guys in the ditch. I want to see them more valued and more appreciated. And I don't care if it's by our project managers, our superintendents, our foremen, they all need to know how valued they are whenever they walk into these doors. So I think that the soft skill that is absolutely needed for any project manager is you need to have, maybe I should just call it a love for people. Maybe it's just, you need to care for people, bottom line. And you need to understand that we're all just trying to put a ham sandwich on our table at the end of the day. Every now and then we would like to have a steak on that table, but everybody out there is just trying to put a ham sandwich on that table every single day. So
let me ask you this, Shane, because in a world where you are in an office, when people don't feel valued and they start to burn out, there are signs, right? We see silence. We see performance can go down. We see just overall, just that
Disengagement.
psychological, what's that, Justin?
Disengagement.
Thank you. So if you've got people in the field, right, literally in the trenches, because how does a project manager, what signals are there for the project manager to sense that? Because they're not sitting next to those people every single day. Like, so are there different signals that you look for from the people who are literally in the trenches?
That's why you have to lick it, see it, and feel it. I say that to somewhat be funny, but it puts a lighter aspect to being on the project. I believe in talking to my team every day. I believe in my guys talking to their team every single day. Everybody needs to have an open door policy. To answer your question specifically, the traits of somebody that's in the process of disengaging is very similar. We have a lot of type A personalities in our field, so we get a little bit of aggression sometimes, and frustration probably surfaces. We would like to recognize that before it gets there, because unfortunately, let's just be real about some things right quick. Every single person deals with their own issues at the house, in their personal life. Different things hit them at different times. And although we would love to say, man, we don't carry that to work, that's just a line of, we'll just stop at that point, okay? Because we carry it because we're human, and we need to have that human element and understand that people carry those things. Now, we're still responsible for carrying a project or carrying a job or a task. I get that. But yet we can't be so cold-hearted that we can't stop understanding. Now, we also need to tell our boys and girls that are going through stuff that sooner or later you got to put your big boy pants back on and back after it. But we need to show empathy, and we need to show sympathy, in my opinion. And so we do see aggression a little bit more. We probably see frustration a little bit more because we're not catching it early enough. But I believe with all of my heart that if we are out there shaking the hands, telling the guys they're appreciated, quite frankly, getting rid of the bad apples. I don't deal with gossip. I don't deal with that nonsense at all. I don't let poison apples be a factor in my world. And those do exist. So I'm going to assume that it's very, very similar to what you guys deal with in the office setting.
And you also mentioned, and I love that, by the way, and I love that there is a different sign of where you said you mentioned the aggression. That's not something necessarily a sign we see, right? So it's interesting difference. But you mentioned succession planning, and you also mentioned you've mentioned that before we went live today. You've posted on my post before, right, that you're very big into succession planning. So what does that look like for a project manager in construction? Is there a difference? Like because as you move up, there are going to be different responsibilities. You've got so many different teams. So what does that look like for your industry?
So one of the elements that we deal with on a consistent basis is guys chasing an extra $1 an hour. Okay. And I'm not going to call names or anything, but I have a gentleman that we hired just recently that just really impressed me, because everybody gets online and everybody wants to apply for stuff online, and they go and all your resumes get piled up into some computer that's been set up with some type of analytics that's going to go through the resumes and pull the quote unquote top resumes out. Man, that's a crappy way of evaluating talent. I hate to be that way, but a computer cannot do that. So I had a gentleman who walked into the office, and I love the fact that he took the initiative to walk in here. He walked in here and said, "Hey, I filled out your application online. I want to know if you're going to hire me." I called up one of our PMs, and of course, I said, "Hey," told him about the young man. So I'm going to use him as your succession planning, okay? I see that young man and the investment that we are making in him. He is an apprentice electrician, and I want to see him. So the succession planning is simple for him. The first step, he needs to get his journeyman license. We need to help him accomplish that. Once he gets his journeyman license, we want to make sure that he has the knowledge to become a trade superintendent. once he becomes that trade super, or sorry, I skipped lead man and foreman. We want to see that he has those leadership qualities to lead a team around him to accomplish a goal. Once he shows those elements, we want to see that we want to build up the knowledge and the ability for him to lead from a superintendent role and so on and so forth up the hierarchy chart that I was sharing. The reason that it's so important is because I sit here and I invest in these gentlemen that go from being an apprentice to, and then all of a sudden they leave and go somewhere else. They get their journeyman. They go somewhere else, become a superintendent. They go somewhere else. Well, I've already invested how many hours in this young man? Well, I want to experience the full investment. So that's why succession planning is so important to me, because I think that we have just accepted that as the way the construction industry is for so long that I don't want to say we ignore it, because there's probably some companies that do it very, very well. But as a general, I've not seen very good succession planning in our fields. We just accept that they're going to chase another $1 an hour and they're just going to go about it.
I love that. I love that.
It's the old school way that I enjoyed so much about loyalty both ways, that it kind of erodes as the evolution of technology and the focus around operationalization, efficiency. So it's interesting. I want to kind of ask you this question, because there are a lot of people that we'll just say have been impacted by the technology layoffs or the downturn in the economy. And construction is in pretty stable business. Sure, the business or the materials, they increase based off of different market fluctuations, but there will always be some sort of commercial or residential construction. Right. What do you recommend for people who are looking for a job if they want to capitalize on this opportunity to get into construction project management? You mentioned that we should look at trades and all of that, but what about people who've been 20 years in IT and they need to find a job? How can they leverage the gap that's in construction, where they need more people that are in that type A personality?
So that's a really tough question that I'm going to try to navigate. So within project management, I was sharing with Elizabeth earlier. I think we toss around, and I'm sure it's probably in your industry as well, we toss around the title project manager way too easily. A lot of people that have the title project manager are not project managers. Let's just put the fact of the matter out there and get the realization that just because you have a title does not make you a project manager. Okay. So I've spent a career cleaning up the messes of people that are quote unquote project managers. If the very first thing that I would look at, if I was looking to make a transition gap, is I would understand, number one, the construction industry and how it works. I would understand the entire ecosystem of a project, because one of the biggest failures that I see with a lot of our young project managers is they don't know where to turn to whenever the answers aren't obvious. Okay. So you need to understand what role does the engineer play? What role does the architect play? What role do my CMT teams play? What role do my inspectors play? My superintendents, my foremen, you need to understand all of that. You need to understand the hierarchy of the stakeholder, because most of the projects I work on, you're not dealing with one person as far as the stakeholder, you're dealing with a team of people. Okay, this person has a responsibility of, whenever I have these types of questions, this person has a different responsibility if I have budgeting questions, because we deal with a lot of municipalities. So there's a team of people that you have. So first of all, understanding that gap. Secondly, I think that we need to demonstrate our ability to have an understanding of the field itself. Although we are not required to be the experts in the field, we need to be knowledgeable enough to have the conversations with them. So if I have a civil contractor that's coming to me telling me that, ma'am, we're below 60 inches, so we need to shore this. If you don't know what that means, you're dead in the water, because you need to understand safety. You need to understand the shoring. You need to understand that there's ingress and egress that needs to happen in certain situations. So how do you do that? That's ultimately your question.
So Shane, can you expand a little bit on just that example for those who've never ingress, egress, shore up? What do these words mean?
Okay, so in the particular, what's in my mind right now, if you have a long ditch where you're putting in maybe storm pipe or something like that, if it is below, so you have OSHA rules that if it is below a certain depth, the walls of that ditch need to be shored up so it does not fall in on the workers. Okay. So what kind of shoring do we use? Ingress and egress is literally the ladder system that's in and out. They need escape routes in case something goes wrong. So ingress is into, egress is out of. So as they move down and they're laying this storm pipe in the ground and connecting it, they need ports of entrance and exits to get in and out of that in a safe manner, because we do have to abide by OSHA or MSHA rules and safety engagements. So
would you ever hire someone, because sometimes people do want to shift industries, to what Justin said. Would you ever hire someone, at least in some type of project management role, that doesn't know that yet, if you feel like they are still just a very qualified project manager in general and can pick up that terminology?
Yes, I would definitely entertain it, because so what I look for in my project, quite frankly, it's not just my project managers, it's in everybody, is number one, do you have the ability to champion a project? Number two, are you going to take it on your shoulders to go figure it out? Are you going to bring me solutions, or are you going to bring me questions? Because if you're going to bring me more questions, all you're going to do is take more of my time, and I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
If you're going to help me find the solutions and we sit down together and find those solutions, so how you come up with those solutions, are you that type of person that does that? That's what I'm interested in. The skill sets. Look, I might be a little different than a lot of people. I like soft skills probably a little bit more than hard skills. Now, if you're going to come be an electrician for us, you have to be licensed. So there's no way around that.
Yeah.
But as far as project management, you need to show the ability to communicate. Well, first and foremost, to champion a project. And what I mean by champion a project, are you going to take the bull by the horns, and are you going to go figure it out? Are you going to run the processes, or are you going to try to develop your own process that you think is better? Okay, I don't need anybody that's going to try to redefine the way that I've done it for 25 years. If I ask you to measure it by ruler, I want you to measure it by ruler. There's a reason I want you to measure by ruler. Okay, so I don't need you redefining the processes, but I also don't want a yes man. I want somebody that's willing to look me in the eye if they think I'm wrong, and be able to defend their stance and why they believe something needs to happen. I don't want it. This is not going to be a cozy. We're not going to hug all day. We're not going to, I need it. I don't necessarily, I want combative. Combative is not what I'm looking for.
You want functional conflict.
Yes. Constructive criticism. Let's evaluate our plans and let's criticize our plans. Let's find the weak links in them. And then lastly, the one element that I really look at is, do we care about the people in the field?
Yeah.
That one is a big one for me, because I don't have my position if it cannot be executed in the field.
So let me ask you this. For people who are in construction, because we know that just the market in general is not great right now.
Mm-hmm.
You told us a story today where an electrician or someone walked into your office and was like, I applied. And you were like, okay, how do I get this person going?
Yes.
You told me a story before we went live today that you had an interview and got hired on the spot.
Yes.
I've spoken to 2 other people who are in the construction industry or architecture who were hired on the spot. So I'm curious because this seems very different, right? I'm noticing a trend of this industry. You guys are seeming to hire people on the spot more. Would there be a benefit to people who are construction PMs, right? Who are looking for work to, as you said, take the bull by the horns, take that ownership and go, I'm just going to go down to the site. I'm going to do this. Is there, I mean, is that, I would think that would be kind of overstepping, but I mean, this is like the fourth or fifth story I've heard from this industry that you guys are getting hired on the spot like that. And I'm just wondering if there's potentially a leg up or a way in for someone to get a new job if they're already in the industry.
So I'll tell you one thing that may be different between the industry that you guys sit in and mine.
Yeah.
If I go apply for a project manager position, you're going to get my resume, and I'm going to tell you all the great elements about how wonderful I am and how loving I am and how great I am to work with. And you're going to call the three people that I give you their names and their phone numbers, and you're going to find out how wonderful I am. Okay. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Here is the different element that we have to provide. We have what's called a project resume. So a project resume is basically a historical data of projects that we've worked on in the past that we show verifiable performance. So most of my projects on my project resume, you can Google and you can go look at pictures of things that I have built. As I was telling you, one of the most rewarding things, I want to kind of follow up with this, since you brought up that conversation, one of the most rewarding things about being in my industry is the first time that you get to take your family across one of the bridges you built. The first time you hear somebody like Justin that goes on vacation to Orange Beach and gets to walk across one of the piers with his family and take pictures of the stingrays or the dolphins off of a pier that I built. That is so satisfactory. It's not that I need to be there with Justin. It's the fact that he went and experienced, I get to experience that with him. So with that project resume, it doesn't have to be just the credentials. It can be literally a list of things that you are proud to be involved in. So my suggestion, if you have ever, if you're not in the construction field, if you've ever done a remodel on your own kitchen, if you've ever done a remodel for somebody else, if you've ever built a house, if you've ever built a garage, if you've ever built anything, develop a project resume and something that could quantify what you were telling me on my personal resume. So we are probably the most scrutinized when we get hired out of anybody else, because you can tell me that you built a house all day long. I don't know if you sucked at it or not. Wow, I shouldn't have said that. I apologize, people. Ladies, I especially apologize to you. You guys can live with it. But we don't know how that turned out, what the decisions that you made to move that project forward. What were the pitfalls in the project? We don't know those things. So if you list it on our project resume, I can ask you specificity into that particular project, and we can look at it together. Now, the reason that I get hired on the spot a lot is because, well, I'm aging in life. I'm not a young buck anymore. And I have a lot of project experience across multiple fields. Okay. Not everybody gets hired on the spot. That's just not a thing, but we are attracted to people that can walk in and immediately do a project, and we can trust that we can do that. So we vet and scrutinize the resumes and the people probably a little bit more harshly than a lot of folks do, if that makes sense. I don't know for certain, but that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I was just curious because you're like the fourth or fifth person in the industry, right? That has like literally said, I had a call, got hired on the spot, or walked in, got hired. And I was just like, that's really interesting. I was wondering if there'd be any advice there. So Shane, we're almost out of time. First of all, can you tell us where people can find you if people want to connect with you?
LinkedIn. I'm not a social media person. That's all.
That's fine. That's fine. So LinkedIn.
Guys, I'm not trying to be an influencer or anything like that. I will tell you that I have a heart for the construction industry. I have a heart for the people that want to be in the construction industry. I don't do social media. I do LinkedIn. That's the only place that I'm even found. But I do want to wish everybody the best of luck. And I would like to say, if I could help, I'll help. I don't have much knowledge. I don't consider myself an expert at anything. But the reality is I have a lot of, I've lived in the valley between the mountains a lot. So I have a lot of things of what not to do. And the number one thing that I will tell you, do not walk into a construction interview for a project manager position or an engineering firm and try to tell them that you can do something that you cannot do.
I would say that's a rule for everything, right?
It will be exposed.
It's worse. Yeah, because construction, the word of mouth is faster.
Yes.
Yeah.
It will
because
be
it's in a locale.
Yes.
Well,
so
no, go ahead, please.
No. You go ahead, ma'am. And I know
called me ma'am. So people who don't know, I like being called ma'am. So the Conrad says face-to-face interaction is so important. Personality, idea generation, and collaboration are all emphasized when people get along, which is 100% true. I mean, again, this is where the second you start saying or you start speaking about things that you can't speak to in real life, you can get in trouble. But I do want to thank you for joining today, Shane. I want to thank everyone for welcoming us into your offices and your homes for an hour today. Shane, we're going to have you stay on after we end the live stream. To everyone else, this is our last live of the year. We pick up again on January 9th. So we'll still be around through podcasts. Also, tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, Justin and I officially launch our membership where you can find courses and lessons literally that you can't find that's not taught in textbooks or certifications. It's the School of Hard Knocks, right? How do you excel in your career? So that goes live tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you guys again. We will see you in the new year. Have an amazing holidays and new year. And we will see you on the other side. Thank you again.
Cheers, folks. Thank you.
Bye.